Matthew Tukaki, who's been on the show a couple of times, Matthew Tukaki, and in fact, late last week, I was canvassing to try and to get him on to talk about his new role as head of a government advisory board on suicide, which is a very, very important issue across this country and in all age groups, demographics, ethnicities. He was a bit reluctant last week to come on, maybe because he knew the storm clouds were gathering over him. And we have had two nights this week, last night and Sunday night. It's the same week, I don't know. Where basically TVNZ has raised some interesting questions about Matthew Tukaki. And we've raised questions about him before. The fundamental allegation that TVNZ led with on Sunday night was that Matthew Tukaki's CV is a bit dodgy, that he has gilded the lily somewhat, and he has made claims about being the head of Drake International in Australia during the GFC. He has made claims about being appointed by Ban Ki-moon, the then head of the UN, to some role in Australia. And pretty clearly, A, he wasn't head of Drake International in Australia during the GFC. He was like a sales manager. So he wasn't the big boss. So that's, wrong. And also, he's come back and said, Ban Ki-moon appointed me in a press release. Newsflash, Matthew, you don't get appointed by press release. Ban Ki-moon announced that you had been elected by a bunch of other people to a certain role in the UN. That is not the same as Ban Ki-moon saying, oh, this guy, Matthew Tukaki's amazing, let's give him the job. Also, Matthew doesn't mention that he had some problems, I think, at Drake International and kind of left the job under a bit of a cloud. All Matthew Tukaki has done in response is get mates of his to write letters saying how cool he is, right? And I've got to say, on the issue of his gilded CV, I don't think Matthew Tukaki's response has really stacked up. He kind of fibbed on his CV. And I would say in terms of character, hiring anyone, if someone fibs on their CV, like if they I knew someone once who made up that they had a degree on their CV. It was hilarious because they were applying for a job at the university that they made up their degree from. They never completed their degree. And I did suggest to this person that was a rather silly thing to do. Oh, no, well, I almost got my degree. No, you didn't get your degree. So Matthew Tukaki, I don't think, has adequately asked these questions, but it seems once he got into, if you like, the New Zealand government system, and it appears that Kelvin Davis had something to do with this, that CV is now taken as gospel, and he's never had to supply a CV again for the many roles that he seems he gets. Maybe that's because his brother works in Willie Jackson's office. I'm not sure. But his brother Michael does work in Willie Jackson's office. Matt Tukaki also had some difficult times when he was the spokesperson, not the chair or the head of the Māori Council. And he went off and formed his own organisation called the Māori Authority, and he kind of pinched $1 million contract off the Māori Council when he didn't have the legal right to do so. That matter, as I understand, is being investigated by the police. So all this is swirling around him, and Kelvin Davis still decides he's the right guy to head this suicide prevention outfit. No checks, no regard to the problems that seem to be swirling around Matthew Tukaki. Also last night, we find that some other work he did for Kāinga Ora, apparently a brilliant report, according to his mate Kelvin Davis, he overcharged them by $60,000. Now that's careless. It really is, overcharging someone you got a contract to by $60,000. I must say, the response from Kāinga Ora, they seemed to take responsibility for not clearly defining the fact that he couldn't rip them off for $60,000. And he has paid the money back. But yet again, a picture is emerging of Mr. Tukaki. And online, I saw someone even suggested that Mr. Tukaki had been involved in some young entrepreneurs thing at St. Patrick's College and had ripped off all his buddies. in the school business. I have no further information than that, but it's out there. And as Mr. Tukaki is clearly a public figure and is receiving public money, I feel justified as a journalist in raising that. Matthew Tukaki, to me, by text yesterday, was mumbling about getting lawyers in and all that stuff, and said he was meeting with his lawyers last night. Well, he wasn't actually. He was doing a Facebook Live or something, blathering on about what a great guy he was and how he'd stand up to this, and pictures of him with famous people and famous Māori. Matthew, good guys you are to have a beer with, mate. There are a lot of questions to be answered here, and I think, like the Mahuta thing, it's not good enough when our tax dollar is being spent to flim-flam this around with half-truths and BS. I might also note, and I think I have to say this in the current climate, Matthew Tukaki has been very quick to call people racist. And he has been very much part of the narrative that whenever any Māori initiative or co-governance initiative is talked about, Matthew Tukaki is the first person to pop up on a TV show, a radio show, screeching racist, along with his mate Willie Jackson. Kelvin Davis, I don't think, is quite as bad at it. But I have to tell you that the pursuit of both these stories is not because these people are Māori. It is because these people, all the people involved in this, are receiving taxpayers' money. And that system of governance and democracy and administration is what our society is based on, and it has to be uncorrupt and it has to be properly administered. So there is nothing racist, there is nothing ethnic about these stories being pursued. And I'd encourage you, when you see these stories and read about them, not to have the reaction some people might have, and that is, oh, bloody Māoris. These people aren't Māori. They're New Zealanders, and they're New Zealanders who are receiving your tax dollars to supposedly do some good in administration. That is the only reason that these stories should be pursued, not because they are Māori, not because there is any race involved in this. I am extending this morning an open invitation to Matthew Tukaki to appear on my show anytime he wants, between 7 and 9, obviously within reason. But Matthew, there is an open invitation for you to come and explain in detail about the CV in particular. All right. Explain what you're under investigation with the Māori Council. And I'm going to put it on the line here. I just do not think you can continue your role as head of the suicide group while there is so much swirling around you. I think the decent thing to do for Matthew Tukaki or anyone else stuck in this position, I think the decent thing to do is to stand down pending a full inquiry. I think that would be the decent thing for Kelvin Davies to ask him to do. And if you're innocent, Mr. Tukaki, in the fullness of time, of course, justice shall be yours. But in the meantime, I think we have a right to an absolutely unimpeachable and unquestionably unimpeachable public service, and it would seem to me we do not have that at present. All right, I'm waiting for the phone to ring, Matthew. It's 0800 33 2283. We'll have a break and I'll have a quick chat about Graham Phillip.
Martin Devlin, Untamed.
Why am I the Minister of Common Sense?
Why? Because you were appointed by the Mahutas.
Under what policy?
The direct selection policy.
Have a look at this interview with, is it Sue's? The first complaint that we have had, Sean Plunkett's interview. This is a beautiful example of a university policy wonk, ladies and gentlemen. Writing supposed independent thought pieces, but absolutely part of the government PR machine. Look, you've got to remember that